to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. So here's what I have planned for this episode. What I want to do is I want to describe to you my experience here entering the Sheriff's Department in the county where I live in Southwest Ohio. And then the discussion that I had with a sheriff's deputy along with a parent who I went with. And the two of us had this discussion and brought a number of things to his attention. Regarding everything that's going on right now in American schools and the death shots and all of that stuff. And then after that, I ended up having a conversation with one of the oldest county prosecutors who works in the county prosecutor's office here in the county where I live. Basically, long story short, although I'm going to get into the details of the conversation, both of these individuals are dead asleep. And the entire sheriff's department is dead asleep. So here's exactly what happened. We walked into the sheriff's office expecting to just meet with a detective. Again, I've walked into police departments before, sheriff's offices, you name it, and asked to speak with a detective. And, you know, the individuals behind the counter always say, well, what is this in regards to? As you're saying it in front of a crowd of people who are, just waiting in the lobby. But we told them that it had to do with the school district, and we told them that it had to do with a number of other things that are going on, and that we didn't feel comfortable bringing this to our town police or local police, but that we wanted to bring this to the county police because, believe it or not, this is a large county matter. And all of these things are a county matter. So they said, well, there are no detectives here, and that's not really how it works, so we're going to give you this dispatch number. You call it, and then they'll send a detective or a sheriff's deputy, rather, out to your house. And then you can have a discussion with them out there about what's going on and whatever else. And we said, okay, fine. So we called the number on the way back to this parent's house, and ultimately we got back there, and then just a few moments later, the deputy showed up, and he walked in, nice guy, not jabbed, sends his child to the school district here, and again, just a professional guy, but confused, to say the least. And he wasn't sure why he was there, so we basically just laid it on him. And we had a bunch of paperwork, and we showed him a couple of papers, and we explained to him, again, the mask wearing, the shot taking, all of it. And we did what we thought anybody should be doing. And so basically, off the bat, I looked at the guy, and I said, the sheriff's deputy, and I said, let me ask you this question. Has anyone in the county brought any of this information to you regarding the harmful nature of the mask wearing or the poisonous, deadly shots that people are taking and losing their jobs over and XYZ? Has anyone brought this to the sheriff's department under any circumstance whatsoever, since all of this has been going on, technically since, I guess, the fall of 2020, if not before then? And he looked at me and he just said no, as plainly as possible. His eyes were huge, his hand was on his face, and he shook his head no, and he just said no. No one's mentioned this at all. I said, you haven't even had a meeting among yourselves, in your own department, among the employees, about any of this, any of these deadly shots, what they're doing to people, how the county health department's rolling these shots out to people, recommending people take them, and they're killing people. And he looked back and he just said, no. He said, I don't know of anybody that's brought this to our attention except for right now. That was alarming, to say the least. But if you've read my Substacks, you know that I believe it was in part 4, the last part regarding open records requests. In the first few paragraphs, I essentially said this is the perfect crime. Because if you can get the entire judicial system to be dead asleep, they will unknowingly not prosecute all of this, not investigate any of this, and have no idea that what's being injected into people is, in fact, a biological weapon designed to kill people. And again, he had no idea. Now, I didn't lay all of that on him about it being a bioweapon, but I did say it's killing people. And I said, this is being done on purpose. There's evidence of this. There's proof of this. And we have proof, of course, through emails and open records requests that a school district has been pressuring people to take these shots, along with, again, the mask wearing, the harmful effects of the mask wearing. I mean, that goes without saying. But again, he looked back and he said the only thing that we've ever heard, of course, is what our sheriff told us, Richard Jones, who told them, that they're not going to enforce the mask wearing stuff. And he hasn't. That if a business kicks somebody out or calls the police or whatever, that there aren't going to be any charges pressed on the person for not wearing a mask within a store because, again, it's not a crime. They can apparently mandate whatever they'd like, but as far as it being a law enforcement matter, the answer is no, it's not, as far as the mask wearing went. But he was at a loss for words when we brought up the jabs. So there was that. He looks at us and he says, okay, he says, here's what I'll do. I'm going to go talk to my supervisor in the car right now, give him a call, and then see what he wants to do. And so he takes our driver's licenses and he goes back and talks with his supervisor. He comes back. They filed a report, gave us the report number, and then said they might be in contact with you to discuss things further. But that's about it. And if that time comes, which it should, then that's the person you hand all the paperwork to, and then they can look into it. So then I left. And I just figured, okay, we'll get a phone call maybe, and that'll be it. And we can go from there. Once I was gone, the sheriff's deputy doubled back and talked with the parent again in her home and said that his supervisor suggested that we just contact the prosecutor's office directly and ask them about this. So essentially they were passing the buck, which again didn't surprise me because they don't know what's going on. They don't know what this is. We probably sound like lunatics to them. They, again, when it comes to the deaths as a result of the shots, they're completely unaware that people are dying of this. When it comes to any kind of heaven forbid you say a depopulation program, forget it. There's no way they'd be able to wrap their minds around that. So there was that. And then the parent called me and said the deputy came back and suggested that we contact the prosecutor's office directly. And I said, great, I'll make the phone call. So I did. Left a message and was directed to a particular prosecutor, left a message with them, and then they got back to me. Probably within 20 minutes. The guy calls back, kind of a good old boy, sort of a, well, it is what it is kind of person, if you know what I mean, and it is what it is, and, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And I thought, this isn't going to go well either. So we had approximately a 35-minute conversation, I would say, at least. And we went through a number of different things. And again, I've talked with lawyers before in the past, numerous lawyers, as a matter of fact. I'm not happy about that because I don't enjoy the profession, but they have an approach that they take where, again, they take what you're talking about right into a court of law. And they essentially say, if it doesn't sound to the lawyer like they can't get 12 jurors to all agree on what it is that you're saying, then they're not even going to take the case. They won't even take it. So it's not that laws haven't been broken. It's not that infractions or codes of conduct haven't been violated. They certainly have, and we all know that, for those of us who are awake. This is difficult, as you might imagine, though, for someone who's dead asleep. Like I said, in particular, if those individuals are involved in the quote-unquote justice system. If they have no idea what's going on, then there's really no waking them up. I'm not sure what to add to that. But the 35-minute conversation we had, he essentially said that school districts basically have the right to mandate whatever they'd like. He never answered my question about the word mandate and how it doesn't legally mean mandatory, that it actually, again, means voluntary participation. I brought this up to him on at least 3 occasions, and he didn't really answer the question. So he either doesn't know, doesn't want to know, or whatever. I'm going to mention this part now because it was interesting and ironic, to say the least. And again, a perfect snapshot of what's really going on. Turns out that the prosecutor I was talking to was working from home. Now, you can probably guess why. He was coughing up a storm like you would not believe the whole time. And he said that he had tested positive for COVID, and it's their policy in the prosecutor's office to stay home a certain number of days, whether it be 7 days or whatever, and then they can come back to work. And I asked him then, point blank, I said, "So did you take the shots?" And he goes, Yeah, I took both of them. He goes, "But I didn't get that third one. And I looked at him. Well, I said to him over the phone, I said, "So the shots don't work, do they?" And there was a pause, and he goes, No, I guess they don't. They really don't. But who knows?" And honest to God, ladies and gentlemen, here's what he said next. He says, "But he goes, it's hard to tell what would have happened." Now, I'm using this voice because this is how he talks. So I apologize. It's kind of, Yosemite Sam and Foghorn Leghorn kind of mixed together. Nice enough guy, but, just kind of a blowhard as well. But one of the oldest prosecutors in the county. So anyway, he goes, there's no way that I'd know if I hadn't had the shots that the COVID wouldn't have been worse. I mean, it could have been worse had I not had the shots. And I'm saying to myself, dude, you have AIDS. You have AIDS now. Your immune system is compromised. You've pumped yourself with poison. You're sick long after having these shots. And again, you're not reading this paperwork. You're not even asking to read the paperwork. I mean, even, ladies and gentlemen, the deputy didn't want to read the folder of paperwork that we had. One of the very first articles I have sitting on top is not just the most recent Pfizer document, because that can be overwhelming, but I have something that's far easier to read, but equally as horrific. And it's an article that I actually read on a previous podcast from the expose. And it's all of those exhibits, Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, of basically how the shots cause AIDS in people, a completely compromised immune system. But again, even the prosecutor didn't ask for any of this paperwork. So he didn't say, well, send me what you've got and I'll take a look at it and whatever. That would have been the first thing I'd have sent him. But again, he actually believes that the shots may have prevented something. And then he went on this run about the mask wearing and how he doesn't really wear the mask and he's never been a fan of them and he knows it's a joke and, this, that, and the other. And then he actually said this too, which was astonishing to me. But after his shot comment, I knew his frame of mind on everything else. Even though he knows Fauci is a liar, and he said that too, which was hilarious. And I thought to myself, but you did what he asked you to do. Fauci told you to take 2 or 3 shots, and you did it, all but the third shot. So the guy you're calling a liar is the same guy you're taking orders from on what to pump into your body. Again, the disconnect is astonishing to me. But he said, I don't really wear the mask. I've never been really a fan. But who knows? He goes, maybe that one time I wasn't wearing the mask is the one time that a virus particle traveled through the air and, went into my mouth, or I breathed it in on somebody, and there you have it, and that's why I'm sick. And again, I didn't have the heart to tell him over the phone that he probably would test positive if he took an HIV test. I just don't. I don't have the heart to tell him that. You have AIDS. It would go right over his head. He'd have no idea because these people don't know what this is. And it's very difficult for these people to prosecute something for which they don't know what it is. I mean, Tom Rentz, from what I can tell, is the only lawyer in the state of Ohio, at least him and the people that he's working with, who know what this is, who know what's going on. And so the prosecutor's last 2 cents, essentially, on the entire issue had to do with there's no way to prosecute this. You have to apply political pressure, and you might be able to file for a permanent injunction through a court of law where a judge would essentially say and write down clearly on a court order that under no circumstance should any children within this school district be told, or any adult be told, to wear a mask ever again. See, that's something that I would like to see happen. I would like to see individuals, even lawyers, just someone, read these facts. And again, the biggest problem here, the biggest mental disconnect is going to be that very thing. It's going to be that mental disconnect between someone having to actually bring this to a judge's attention and then everybody crossing their fingers hoping that the judge knows what's going on and is completely based, or at least aware of what's going on, and that the lawyer is too. But if both of them are jabbed, or even one of them is jabbed, that means that that individual is going to have to come to grips with what they've done to themselves by reading these facts. And I'm not sure that they're prepared to do that. That's going to be the biggest problem here moving forward. So I still recommend bondsforthewin.com. I still recommend going through those 3 steps in full to make sure, again, that the school district knows that we are watching them. And after everything that's happened here over the last 2 years, you would think now that school districts would know that to re-implement mask wearing would be the biggest mistake that they could possibly make, even from a financial standpoint, because as I've brought up, you can file claims against these people for a variety of issues because, again, breaking their oath, being dishonest, XYZ, harming people. You can bring all of this to the insurance company's attention. And the insurance company, again, if they pay out a claim to someone who has been damaged, and like I've said in the past, we've all been damaged by all of this. We've all been hurt by all of their actions, whether we have children in the system or not, whether we're employed by the system or not. But that insurance company has, again, a deductible that the individual has to pay. That's the point. They have to pay that. And that can be, again, in the thousands of dollars or upwards of $10,000. And again, these elected officials don't know that. So keep in mind, I think, that really is the first step. The second step is you've got to have people run against these individuals for school board. But the people that are running for school board have got to be based. They have to be completely awake. And if they're not, then God help us all. Because these factories that we call schools are cranking out some of the most degenerate material that you could possibly imagine. It's a colossal waste of time going to these K-12 schools now. There's no learning taking place. It's a playground of degeneracy. Almost everywhere you turn. Now, I know some schools are better than others. I'm well aware of that. But they still have the bread and circus. They still have all the distraction methods. They still have state boards of education and governors piling on the diversity, equity, and inclusion garbage right down everybody's throat. And I'm glad that it's illegal in a lot of states, and that's a good thing. The problem is it's becoming law in lots of states also. The second step, which is remarkably important too, is that people need to look up on their state departments of education, and you can use a basic search engine to find this. And you type in the name of your state, Department of Education, after that, and then you type in the search bar, citizen complaint form or educator complaint form. And something should pop up, because in most states, again, any citizen who lives in that state can file a complaint against a person who works for a school system or anyone who holds an educator license, a teaching license, an administrative license, a counseling license through the Department of Education within their state. And you fill that out. Look up the codes of conduct for those certificate holders and the rules that they have to follow. If they have clearly violated that, and you have the proof that you've printed off and you can send in as part of your full investigation, that, hey, look, here are the violations, here's what they've done, here's their own code of conduct, here's what I think they've broken, and here's the proof right here that's also attached. They have to investigate that by law. If the individual has broken those codes of conduct and it's crystal clear to the person who's reading it, then they have to contact, of course, the individual that you're claiming has violated their own codes of conduct. And they have to give that, and then they set up an appointment, as I've said in the past, with that individual, and then they have the responsibility to ask them questions and ask them about what's going on and basically get their side of everything. You remain anonymous throughout the entire process. They can't tell they can't tell the person who works for the school who filed the complaint by law. In most cases, at least it's that way in Ohio. But that's about it. Those are the moves that parents have. So there's the insurance angle now with Bonds for the Win. And again, I recommend getting over to that website and printing out all of those forms and saving those templates and moving them to a Word document so that you can keep them for future use. Because as I've also said in the past, this isn't going to go away. They will re-implement masks at a later time whenever they want. They'll certainly try, but they would be foolish to do it because they know what's going to happen the very next board meeting that they have, when everybody shows up and, wants to rip their arms off and beat them to death with their own arms. I mean, that's the next thing that would probably happen. I mean, at this point, why not? So, yeah, that's about it. The second step, like I said earlier, you can run for school board if you want that thankless, godless job. And the last thing, of course, is the citizen complaint form. And as I've said and beaten to death a million times, and will continue to do so on this podcast, you've got to walk away from these environments, because the easiest way to make these environments destroy themselves and just be destroyed is your lack of participation. With a lack of enrollment, again, they can't exist. They just can't. They're not going to be able to turn on the lights. What they also wouldn't be able to do, they would try, but it wouldn't work. They would try to consistently put levies on ballots for people to vote on so that they get more money. But of course, all they're doing is taxing property owners and getting more money from property owners so that they can keep the lights on, when in fact, they're losing employees because of their own practices and everything that they're doing. I mean, as I've said too in the past, they're just destroying themselves and they don't even know it. So I say, again, my recommendation is that you homeschool as much as you possibly can. There's Abeka.com, there's CalvertEducation.com. I know there's the Ron Paul curriculum. I have some questions about that, but I know it exists. And those are the options, I think, going forward here. So I'm not saying that the war is over. The war is certainly not over. There's more pressure that can be put on people. I will say this too: the prosecutor did bring up civil lawsuits. He said you can try to contact a civil lawyer. In particular, again, if your child has been physically or medically hurt as a result of the actions of the school, and you have all of the emails that prove this and the opportunities that you gave the school to rectify the situation and they didn't and they refused and continued to force your child this, that, and the other. But one of the things I told the prosecutor is I said, well, sure. I said, there are a number of individuals who have ended up with bacterial pneumonia as a result of wearing the masks. And he said back to me, he said, I understand. He goes, I get it. I get it. He goes, but how is it that you know that that child, student, whatever, adult who works in that building would get bacterial pneumonia as a result of wearing the mask? Why wouldn't they get it from walking their dog or riding in their car or somewhere else? He said you would have to make the actual connection that it was the mask that caused it. And he goes, in a court of law, in particular in a civil court, he goes, that would be very difficult to do. Even that would be difficult to do for them. I mean, it almost has to be so cut and dry. I mean, I even said to the guy, I said, look, we're talking about a literacy problem here too. I said, they're not even reading the directions on the side of the box where it says it doesn't do anything. And he started laughing. He goes, I know. I get it. I think it's all garbage. And that was it. I mean, it was just sort of this, I don't know. It was just sort of this very nonchalant, well, it's never going to be prosecuted kind of thing. And as demoralizing as that may be and may sound, I think it highlights, and I think this is a takeaway, albeit a frightening one, as I've said already. I just think it's continuing to show how many people are dead asleep at the wheel right now. They do not know what's going on in their own country or around the world. They have no clue. They don't even know what's going on inside of their own body. And like I said, the guy was hacking up a lung constantly. He's like, yep, I've been coughing like crazy and, I felt terrible and, whatever else. And I'm like, you're dying, bro. You're dying. And that's not going to get better with time. So, yeah. I don't know what else to add, really. I think that's about all I have for this particular episode, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. I'm not discouraging anybody from going to their sheriff's department and doing the same thing. In fact, I recommend you do it. Take the steps that I took. Again, not difficult steps to make. Call the sheriff. You can do all of this from the comfort of your own home. I mean, you don't have to leave the house if you don't want to. But call the sheriff's department in your county, have a deputy come out, and ask them the question that I asked right off the bat. Just have a face-to-face conversation with them. Has anyone brought any of this to your attention within your sheriff's department about the mask wearing, its illegality, its physical harm to people, or these bioweapons that are being called vaccines that are killing people, and the responsibility that the sheriff's department has to bring this to the attention of all of the people who are telling people to take these shots or even distributing these shots? Ask them that question. Have the paperwork with you too. Like I said on the Quite Frankly podcast, print out this documentation. Print out as much as you possibly can. Print out the Pfizer document. Print out that expose article. Get on the expose and start bouncing around. On the expose, you've got to highlight the entire article with your cursor and then cut and paste it and move it over to a Word document in order to print it rather. Unfortunately, you can't just print off of that exact website like you can some other websites, which is odd, but whatever. But again, the expose is a great website because almost every single thing on there is medical proof that what's going on here is a purposeful kill program, and it's hurting people and killing people and maiming them permanently. So this just needs to be brought to their attention as much as possible, and just see what they do. See if they contact their supervisor, see if they pass the buck or not, see if somebody else above them decides to have a conversation with you about what's going on. And then again, they may just push you to the prosecutor's office. And if they do, make that move. I would say just make that move. Do what you have to do to see if a prosecutor would actually have a discussion with you about this, because at the very least, you're going to find out whether or not these people are awake or not. Again, to give you a more specific location, Butler County is the county north of Hamilton County, and Hamilton County is where Cincinnati, Ohio is. Politicians around here have always wanted to turn Butler County into a blue county. They've worked very hard for that to be the case. And I'm not sure that it ever has been. I could be wrong on that, but either way, it's a conservative area, even though there's a university and branch universities within this county. But the number of people that are dead asleep throughout law enforcement and the justice system is mind-boggling. I mean, again, too, if you've ever heard any of the Supreme Court justices talk about all of this, they actually think that this is some kind of a quote-unquote virus. I mean, they seem to believe that. And that people mandating shots for other people is not unconstitutional. These people are nuts. They're asleep. They don't know what's going on. I understand, again, that the depopulation pill can be a hard one to swallow. But anybody who's read history, and accurate history, and investigated such subjects should know that that's always been a part of the plan. And it's being carried out by the useful idiot. That's the worst part. So I'll end with this. And this was kind of a post that was on greatawakening.win, and I'm not going to read it, but I just wanted to mention it because it's 100% accurate, I think, and I agree with it. I think that as time continues to roll down here, and the more people figure out what they've done to themselves with these shots, and what they've done to their own children, and what they've done to their own family members by turning them off and not paying attention to them and this, that, and the other. Some people are going to be so stubborn that even when the facts come out about all of this and the permanent harmful effects of these shots, that they will say, well, whatever, I did what I thought was best and that's it. Even though they're facing death, they're staring death right in the face and a lifetime of illness right in the face. Or they're going to start killing themselves because they're going to be so overridden with grief and denial and a flood of other emotions that there's just no way that they're going to be able to live with themselves with what they've done, again, to themselves or other people. I stopped shy of saying that to the sheriff's deputy, that he's probably going to start experiencing more suicides in his profession as a result of, again, people figuring out and learning about what they've actually done to themselves and what these companies are capable of and what governments are capable of. I mean, for people to walk around in the United States and actually trust their government is an absolute embarrassment. I'm shocked that anybody actually trusts our government anymore. They would never lie to us, especially on the TV. That would never happen. That's all that's been happening since the beginning of time. So, yeah, not to end on a sour note necessarily, but my point is there are things that we can control and there are things that we cannot control. And the things that we cannot, that we can't control, we need to do our best to not worry about it. And just continue to protect ourselves and do our best to protect those that we care about. And then hold these scumbags accountable in those three ways within the school systems that we possibly can. Other than that, one of the things that's happening a lot now in universities is that they're lifting their mask mandates, so to speak, but the only places where students are forced to wear them is within the classrooms now. And see, that even goes back to what I said earlier about the business of these professors and these school officials making policy now that is completely illogical, but it's only being done to satisfy their own mental capacity or incapacity, however you want to put it. It's their own neuroses, their own paranoia, their own hypochondria. I mean, I'm certain that the local university here where I live, a memo or an email went out from some professors and they all said, we're fine with the mask mandates being lifted, but they will not be lifted in our classrooms because we need to feel safe and we need to this and we need to that and blah, blah, blah. So you still have students then passing out, breathing in their own toxic air inside of the classroom, but as soon as they walk out into the hallway, they can take it off. There's just no logic. There's no logic with these people or any of these environments. No logic whatsoever. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. But you can't be that illogical and expect to survive. Life does not work that way. You can't be so wrong on something that is so obviously incorrect and expect to be okay in the end. And that's about it. Again, if you needed another reason to leave these educational environments, I don't know how many more reasons you need, but that's about all I have. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, next week, I believe next Wednesday, Dr. Robin McCutcheon is going to be on. We're going to be having that discussion before Wednesday, but I'll air that episode on Wednesday, and we're going to bring up a number of different things, probably discuss this subject a little bit more in depth as well. And with all of that said, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Take care. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.